Recently, the World Bank released a report on the global economic outlook. The report titled Multipolarity. The new global economy proposed that 6 rising economies will account for more than half of the world economic growth in the next 20 years. Let's find out which are the 6 economies and the role they will play in the global economy. First, let's have a look at the newsreel.
The World Bank predicted that 6 rising economies will be responsible for more than half of the world's economic growth for the next 20 years. The 6 are China, India, Russia, Brazil, Indonesia, and Korea. This prediction was made in a World Bank report titled Multipolarity, the New Global Economy. The report said these 6 economies will record an average annual growth of 4.7% until 2025. Advanced economies were predicted to grow just 2.3% annually in the same period, but were expected to continue their dominance over the world economy. The report also advised structural change for these rising economies to expand domestic demand and improve productivity if they were to continue the momentum of growth. With economic and financial clout shifting towards these rising economies, the global system is headed for an era of multipolarity. Korea is one of the rising economies predicted by the World Bank to lead the world's economic growth. Let's find out more about what its role should be in the new multipolar global economy.
Welcome back. To discuss today's topic, transformation of a global economy, we have 2 expert guests in the studio. Sitting on my right, Mr. James Rooney, who is the CEO of our Market Force and Vice Chairman of the Seoul Financial Forum. Thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure.
Well, next, sitting on my left, Dr. Song Won-gun. You got a new title, actually, yes. He is the Director, Division of Research Planning and Coordination at Korea Economic Research Institute. Always welcome to our program.
Thank you.
Well, since 2008, when there was a global financial crisis, many countries are struggling to overcome the financial crisis. Some of them have performed very well, while some others have not. So I think the report released by the World Bank last May 15th is very interesting, I think. So today I want to discuss about the details about this report. Well, let me ask you first question to Mr. Rooney. Well, as far as I know, the report released by OECD have been very influential and significant. Please tell us the significance and influences of the reports released by the World Bank over the global economy.
The World Bank has had a long history since its inception of assisting in development around the world, especially in the less developed countries, and has prepared, of course, many reports in the process of that. But it would be fair to say that a lot of those reports have a limited audience. They're perhaps more academic or more technical. But it's interesting that they are releasing this report under a new initiative that they call the Global Development Horizons, or abbreviated to GDH. And that's actually an attempt by the World Bank to start being more inclusive, to seek contributions and participation from much more participants around the world in issues that are going to affect the future of the world economy, the next 10 years and even the next 20 years. This report is actually the first in that series. So it's a significant report in its content, but it's also significant as that step towards more open involvement with the World Bank from all the members of our world.
Could you tell us the theme of the report, multipolarity, and then detailed contents of it?
So I think, there have been a number of changes happening over the last decade in particular, as we've seen some of the emerging market countries become more relevant in the global economy. But the global financial crisis really created almost a time shift where those emerging market economies responded to the crisis much more robustly than the developed economies. And in fact, because of problems that had built up over the years in developed economies, many of them are now going to have very sort of subpar or sub growth lower than their traditional expectations. And in the aggregate, the estimates are that developed countries now, instead of being the drivers of the world economy, will perhaps be lagging with around 2 2 or 2.5% per annum growth. But that role of leading the world economy now shifts to these developing countries like China, obviously, which is the big elephant. But there are more than just China that are playing a key role in economic growth today. And this report looks at that and looks at some of its implications, especially for what they call multipolarity, which essentially means there's no one or two centers of growth, bipolarity, let's say Europe and the US, but now it's becoming a world where there are multiple centers that contribute significantly, and that has lots of implications, including particularly for what role different currencies will play.
Well, Dr. Song, as Mr. Rooney explained, well, this report gives us the names of 6 rising economies who will play a very important role in the future. And who are they? And then I want to know also how they were selected.
Okay. This report named 6 countries, 6 nations. We know already the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, and China. In addition to these countries, Indonesia and Korea will be added, and so this is we could call it BRICS. Okay, one more I and one more K. So, and these economies' growth will have significant spillover effects on the global economy. Since after the global financial crisis, China is currently one of the major drivers of global economic growth, with the U.S. and the Eurozone. But as the world economy exits from the global financial crisis in 2008 and 2009, the advanced economies such as US and Europe and Japan are still suffering from stagnant growth. But emerging economies such as China and India have quickly returned to their fast pre-crisis growth trend. China has experienced a high level of growth rate, economic growth, even during the global financial crisis. And now China is the world's second largest economy and the largest exporter, who outpaced Germany. And China's contribution to global growth is increasing, and China will be the major contributor in the future. And India experienced a contraction during the global financial crisis, but recovered quickly and attained 10% growth rate in 2010. And India's economy is growing fast based on the kind of a strong service sector such as the IT service, and the size and influence of India's economy will be expected to rise. And with China and India and Brazil, BRICS, Brazil and Russia are accounting for an ever-increasing share of trade, finance, and labor flows in the global economy. And Indonesia is one of the low-income countries, but it has large growth potential due to its huge domestic market and rich natural resources. And then the last one is the Korea, and Korea is the leading emerging economy as we know. It has strong manufacturing sector, abundant skilled labor, and Korea is very active in participating global trade and investments. That's why the World Bank predicts the global growth will be led by these 6 emerging economies.
Well, it's quite good to hear that Korea is on the list. Well, Mr. Rooney, actually, it is not, too early to expect some responses from the countries around the world to this report. But maybe we can guess what kind of the responses there could be in the future from the countries around the world to this report.
Well, yes, I think we can look at the circumstances of the countries that are affected by this report, and if I just sort of run through them very quickly, Japan, frankly, is not just overcoming issues related to the global financial crisis or even its earthquake and tsunami and the nuclear problems. It's in a fundamental decline because of demographics. Its population will be shrinking. It's a mature economy that is likely to get smaller, certainly on a relative basis, maybe even on an absolute basis as time goes by. The U.S., which still has huge amount of potential, has actually a population that relative to other countries is limited. It's only 300 million people. Greater Europe is 600 million people, and just our neighbor in China is 1.3 billion people. So, you know, the population factor is inescapably going to drive things over the long term. So the U.S. is not down and out, but it's got a lot of internal problems to resolve, and it needs to become competitive again. It needs to become properly structured, and that's got a lot to do with the government's deficits and so forth. Europe has clearly short-term problems that is going to take them really some challenges to resolve. But if I take Greater Europe rather than just the EU, again, in the longer term, there's still plenty of growth potential. There's a lot of countries in Europe that are not yet participating at a full pace. But I think the key point, and the report gives an aggregate growth rate for these economies of about 2.3%. I think that's fair, even perhaps too optimistic. Whereas they used to perhaps grow at double that. The U.S. had a trajectory about 5% until recently. So then these BRIC countries clearly are the focus of the report in one sense, because they're going to play this increasingly important role. 4 of them already knew they were BRICS, if you like, and I think Korea has long received credit for its 50-year history of high growth. Indonesia perhaps is a little bit of a surprise in the game. All of them have different issues to face, which I think we may come to in a minute. But what about the other countries? And that's what's, I think, interesting here. The growth demand of these 6 countries will actually... There'll be a rising tide that will lift all ships, if you like, because already we're seeing commodity prices in minerals and also food prices, which is agricultural demand. Prices rising, demand rising, there is need for more food supply. The less developed countries, the ones who are neither advanced nor in this BRIC group, actually have the opportunity to benefit if they have commodities, which many of them do, if they have amounts of land that can become agricultural, which again many of them do. So I think we can see benefits even flowing into Africa, into Central Asia, and many other countries. So there's something in this for everybody, although the report doesn't dig as deep as that. It's relatively macro. But I think we could see countries starting to coalesce around this observation and realize if they're constructive about it, there's opportunity there for all the other guys, which hasn't perhaps been as true for maybe 100 years.
I see. Well, as Mr. Rooney explained, the economic situations around the world are a little bit different. However, then we can see the development of the situation in every countries. So I want to know further about the role of the Korea. When Korea needs to play in the future as one of the 6 countries.
Okay. Among these 6 countries, Korea is relatively close to the advanced economies. Korea is the highest income country among these nations, and the consumptions and the size of the domestic market in Korea is relatively large compared to other emerging economies. So, and in many manufacturing sectors like IT or automobiles and shipbuilding, Korea is already a leading country, and Korean companies are major global players in these sectors. So that means that these companies are leading multinationals originated from Korea, and these companies invest abroad very aggressively right now. So this means Korea and Korean multinationals are contributing to the process of industrial globalization. So, and Korea is pursuing trade liberalization very actively right now. Korea is one of the few countries that have FTAs with both U.S., United States, and the European Union. And Korea is expected to become a leader or a moderator for the East Asian economic integration. So Korea is becoming a kind of a free trade hub in East Asia. And Koreans are known for their efforts or attitude for getting higher education, and this kind of attitude towards higher education, I think, will make Korea having abundant skilled labor and technological development. So in this regard, Korea will contribute to the global growth significantly.
Maybe we could add a few things to that as well. Korea if you take aggregate trade, Korea is in, I think, the top 10, but just as an exporter, Korea is number 7 ranked in the world. So, you know, we're not a trivial player. That achievement of GDP per capita that is now, you know, the highest in the group of 6 and certainly approaching that of advanced economies demonstrates that we not only have made accomplishments, but actually now we have kind of new responsibilities to become a consumer for the world. And one of the emphasis in this report is that that Korea should encourage the development of domestic demand.
Right.
Partly for its own benefit, because we produce a lot of things, but also because that will naturally benefit the suppliers, because we have no raw materials, we have no natural energy sources in Korea. Therefore, other countries benefit as we grow and consume these things. The other observation for Korea is that, you know, we have a significantly underdeveloped service sector, and we're not necessarily aware of that, but it's actually part of what Korea needs to pay attention to maintain this growth trajectory that's referenced here. And I think you know, the G20 last year, and I think that's continued emphasis today, the Seoul Development Initiative, which basically I interpret in this way. Korea has a development model that many other countries would love to emulate, especially if they are not commodity-producing countries. So our KDI and other institutions can provide that kind of soft knowledge, if you like, to other countries. We've got companies that can go around the world building infrastructure or establishing plants in Hungary or other countries less fortunate than we are, contributing to their domestic economies. And I think the third role is that we are going to have an excess of capital in the future. We've already become a net exporter of capital, whereas we used to be a recipient of aid. We're now a provider of aid. I think it can go a long way beyond that, where Korea's excess capital can be mobilized for the benefit of less fortunate countries who are at an earlier stage in their development, just like we did over the last 50 years.
As far as I know, the report also gives advices to the economies, how to maintain sustainability in the economic development. Could you tell us about that?
Yes, I think, you know, each one, interestingly enough, is a different case. I've already covered Korea and its desire to play the role of a sort of middleman or a bridge between developed countries and less developed countries and be a voice for them, particularly in the G20. China, which has been the sort of big elephant coming out of the jungle and emerging back into the world economy like it was hundreds of years ago as a significant player, during the next 15 years or thereabouts, it will actually overtake the U.S. economy and become the #1 largest economy in the world. Now, to continue doing that simply on an export basis is not sustainable. And I think the Chinese government recognizes that now they need to gear shift and encourage domestic demand, which you see happening. They're becoming the world's largest automobile market and so forth. So I think we can expect China, who's put in place a lot of important things like infrastructure, to now start becoming a consumer, and that creates opportunities for lots of other countries. I think also we may expect China to start outsourcing certain labor-intensive activities that maybe are becoming expensive to do in China. And again, that's another spillover benefit. If we move to Brazil, which, you know, is a country with great natural resources, a big population, a lot of potential, they have been growing strongly recently, but actually they're running into some challenges because they haven't put in place the infrastructure. And there are a lot of social and other environmental barriers to them doing the necessary building of that infrastructure. If they don't overcome that, it's going to hold them back. So the message for Brazil, I think, is, you know, get that infrastructure in place, as China has done. And then India, which a lot of people look at as though it were similar to China, in my view is a very, very different situation than China. Again, the infrastructure is lacking, and it's a huge exercise to build infrastructure. But where China could be considered one integrated country with essentially the same race and not religious divisions and so on, India is maybe the opposite. It's very fragmented. It was never a single united country in its history, really. It was a lot of different kingdoms and states, which you can see reflected today. They have a lot of different ethnic groups. They have a lot of different religious groups. And there's a lot of political resistance to necessary, you know, directional changes. So I think India is naturally going to have more of a struggle to catch up on the sort of China direction, and arguably it'll be an order of magnitude behind, but it'll be a big contributor. Then Russia under Putin has certainly stabilized. It's got a lot of interesting challenges. They're doing a lot of the right things. Will they keep their political stability? If they do, then I think this prediction is reasonable. Indonesia, which is one of the late entrants, is a very interesting case. I think you have about 250 million people there, which is substantial. You have all these natural resources, you have all this potential, but historically, corruption and other things like that have got in the way, and there are big infrastructure issues too. So again, you heard me referencing infrastructure rather repeatedly, and isn't that where Korea has something to offer in the world? Haven't we been an infrastructure expert around the world already? And so I go back to Korea and say, let's use our capital, let's use our industrial and construction talent, and let's use our development experience to try and help other countries build the kind of infrastructure that can unlock, and that's the key, that can unlock their growth potential. China is doing this already in Africa as part of their search for natural resources, and I think that's very, very far-sighted. But I think Korea can play a role in that in countries like Turkey and Saudi Arabia, the Middle East, not just roads and so forth and harbors as we have been building, but power stations, new ones, and renovation of old ones that are less efficient, and we can make more use of the scarce resources that are available.
Well, thank you. Well, I want to talk about the currency issues. Actually, this report also deals with some currency issues. According to this report, the U.S. dollar will lose its status as reserve currency, number one currency. What were the factors leading to this conclusion, Dr. Song?
The U.S. dollar is still the world's dominant and reserve currency, but the reason why World Bank expects the change in the status of U.S. dollar from the dominant international currency to one of few international currencies in the future, I think it's from the fact that emerging economies are growing very rapidly, and the importance of their currencies in the international finance, or the international use of these currencies is increasing, like Chinese renminbi. But for the currency of the specific country to use as the dominant international currency, the size of the economy matters, and open and deep and broad financial markets are needed. And this country should have a large share of global trade. So the U.S. share of global trade is predicted to decline in the future, but the share of emerging economies in global trade will increase. Also, the financial markets in emerging economies will be expected to develop rapidly. So we might easily predict the increase in importance of emerging economies for global economic growth and global trade and investments. So the international use of currencies of emerging economies will be increased, and the status of U.S. dollar as the international currency or dominant currency will be lowered. But I think, however, the U.S. dollar remains the important international currency in the future.
Okay. Well, time is very limited, so I'd like to ask the question to Mr. James Rooney, and could you please answer very briefly? I think that if U.S. loses its status as reserve currency, partially, which currencies could partially replace, the USA dollar status?
So, the last 10 years or more, we've had the Japanese yen, the euro group, and the US dollar playing the role of important currencies. It used to be before that the British currency, the pound, the German mark, and maybe the French franc. So the world changes. And as we've already mentioned, the Japanese economy is likely to be a less important factor in the future, so we can imagine less role in trade and therefore less role as a reserve currency. But we're clearly going to see the Chinese renminbi become a very important factor. The Chinese, although they haven't fully liberalized the currency, they're already allowing offshore holders to hold assets in Chinese renminbi. I can imagine an increasing use between Korea and China, for example, of trade in renminbi-based designation. So I think it's already happening. The question is, how will it sort of globalize? How will it become spread around the world? And will it be that one continues to play with this multi-currency or multipolarity situation? Or will the world try and find a solution where you can get down to sort of focusing on one currency instrument, like a basket of currencies or a special drawing right? Because, I've always taken the view that currencies were invented by man to create pain on himself, right? And the more currencies you have that matter, the more danger there is of changes between them that create risk, create financial losses, and so forth. Of course, also create speculation opportunities. I'd like to see a world where there was only one currency, and then a lot of these issues would go away.
Right.
But we're so far from that. The key issue then is that the global financial infrastructure must address, for lots of reasons that we've mentioned already, this global trade, this global investments from Korea into other people's countries, just as a simple example, where those investments do not have to be at risk of currency fluctuations.
Okay.
It's a tall order, but it's a critical mission.
Well, actually, I would like to give you a final question. I will give you the only 10 seconds to both of you, okay? Well, Korea needs to play a more important role in the future, according to this report. So to make this prediction a reality, what kind of efforts the Korean government should make?
Yeah, I think Korea needs three things. First one is the more technological development is needed, and for raising the domestic demand, we need to raise the productivity of the service sector. And then institutional reform, such as the liberalization and deregulation, is still needed. For these things to implement institutionally, Korea will contribute to the global growth in the future.
Thank you. And yes,
I
one
think,
word, please.
I think the real phrase I would use is we need to develop our soft talent, our human talent. We need to have people who are more familiar with other people's countries. We need to have people who are competent in languages other than Korean.
I see.
I would put it, let's develop the human talent of Korea, because that's how all of this is really going to work, whether it's in finance, in the service sector, or in leading global economic development.
Well, thank you, Mr. Rooney and Dr. Song, and thank you for sharing your insights on today's topic. Well, I'm Shin Sang-hyo for In Focus, and see you next time.